drug lord in Mexico, the man the US offered 15 million to capture, is finally killed. And the country doesn't erupt in peace, but in chaos? Today, we're unpacking one of the most explosive stories in recent years. You've heard El Mencho is dead, but in this video, you'll learn how he was taken down, who he really was, the wild history of the cartel he built, and what this could mean for Mexico, the drug war, and everyday people. Grab a drink because the full story is even wilder than the headlines. Let's start with a guy who went from avocado farmer's son to one of the world's most feared cartel bosses. El Mencho, whose real name was Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, was born in a small town in Michoacan, Mexico in 1966. He grew up poor, dropped out of school, and in the 1980s crossed into the United States illegally, worked odd jobs, got arrested for drugs, and was deported back to Mexico. Now, here's the thing. Instead of turning his life around, he turned towards organized crime. He joined the Mencho cartel, worked on the front lines, and learned the drug trade inside out. By 2009, a power vacuum formed in Mexico's criminal underworld. Leaders of the Mencho cartel were arrested or dead, and a split happened. One faction became a group of fighters called Los Mata Zetas. Guess who led them? Yup, El Mencho. They defeated a rival known as La Resistencia, consolidated drug routes across western Mexico, and in less than a year, rebranded as the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. Now listen to this. From just a few hundred street soldiers, CJNG exploded into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, trafficking fentanyl, coke, methamphetamine, and more, not just into the US, but around the world. Hey, people talk about cartels like they're gangsters hiding in the shadows, but CJNG was different. They didn't just fight quietly in alleys. They did things like shot down a Mexican army helicopter in 2015 to prevent El Mencho's capture. Yes, shot down a military helicopter, attacked police and military in crowded city streets, took over ports like Manzanillo to control chemical imports for synthetic drugs. This wasn't low-level organized crime. This was an armed insurgency, blending brutal violence with massive money, infrastructure, and political infiltration. February 22, 2026 began quietly in the mountain town of Tapalpa, Jalisco. It was early, just before sunrise, when Mexican Special Forces units moved into the area. According to officials, the operation had been prepared in advance using intelligence gathered over time, including support from US agencies. The target was a rural property outside town. Armored vehicles advanced along narrow roads, cutting through forested hills. Helicopters were positioned to provide aerial oversight. The objective was clear: locate and detain Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes. As security forces approached the property, gunfire broke out. Cartel gunmen stationed at the site engaged the advancing units, triggering a firefight that lasted several minutes. Residents in nearby areas later reported hearing sustained bursts of gunfire echoing through the mountains. During the exchange, multiple armed men were neutralized. El Mencho himself was wounded in the confrontation. Authorities stated he was found injured and was quickly secured by the Special Forces team. He was placed on a stretcher and transported to a waiting military helicopter under heavy guard. The aircraft lifted off from the area and began flying toward Mexico City for emergency medical treatment. However, officials later confirmed that he died from his injuries during the transfer. At the site of the operation, security forces recovered a large cache of weapons, including high-caliber firearms and tactical equipment. Several armored vehicles were also seized. By midday, the Mexican government publicly confirmed the death. Within hours, news of the operation spread nationally and internationally, marking one of the most significant security actions in Mexico in recent years. But here's where it gets truly intense. Instead of celebrations, CJNG loyalists struck back, violently. Across Mexico, in multiple states, cartel members burned vehicles and buildings, blocked highways with burning barricades, attacked police checkpoints, disrupted major airports and canceled flights, prompted international travel warnings. Cities like Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, places you might associate with mariachi and beaches, saw real chaos. Even foreign governments warned citizens to stay indoors and avoid crowds. To put this in context, Mexico's drug war has been going on since the early 2000s, when the government first began targeting cartels head-on. Cartels like Sinaloa once dominated the landscape. El Chapo Guzman was the boss, until CJNG rose as their main rival. Instead of weakening the cartels, past takedowns often led to fragmentation and more violence, because when a leader dies, internal factions compete for power. That's the real fear now. CJNG without Mencho could splinter into even more dangerous groups. So what does this mean, realistically? Good news, the world's most wanted criminal is gone. A major strike against a global drug network. But real danger remains. Violent retaliation by cartel factions. Power struggles within CJNG and with rival cartels. Increased instability in regions already suffering from corruption and poverty. This is why some analysts are warning that we may actually see more violence in the short term, not less. And don't forget, drugs like fentanyl continue to flood the US and other countries even without Mencho at the helm. So was this the end of the cartel war? Not even close. El Mencho's death is a major milestone. But history shows that removing a kingpin doesn't end the war. It just shifts the battle lines. If you want updates on what happens next, power struggles, violence, or peace efforts, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell.